There's a practice so old it predates every religion you've ever heard of. No church built it, no prophet revealed it. It came from a being the ancient Egyptians didn't even classify as human, Thoth, the god of wisdom, writing, and the hidden architecture of the cosmos. And buried inside his teachings is a sleep ritual. Not a meditation, not a breathing technique, a full, deliberate protocol for separating your conscious awareness from your physical body and sending it somewhere else entirely. I know how that sounds. I thought the same thing the first time I encountered it. But then, I actually did it, 3 nights in a row. And what happened on the 3rd night is the reason I'm making this video. Most people have never heard of this ritual because it doesn't live in mainstream spiritual content. It's buried in Hermetic texts, in fragments of the Emerald Tablet tradition, in the deeper layers of what serious scholars call the Egyptian books of Thoth. These aren't bedtime stories. They were guarded, taught only to initiates. And the reason they were guarded, I now believe, is because they actually work. What I'm about to walk you through is not a theory. It's a documented ancient system, a first-person account of what happened when I followed it, and an honest look at why the experience genuinely frightened me, even though I've been studying this material for years. Before you can understand the ritual, you need to understand who, or what, Thoth actually was, because the modern summary of him is almost insultingly thin. He shows up in documentaries as the ibis-headed scribe god, the one who weighed hearts in the underworld and kept cosmic records. That's true, but it's the surface layer. Underneath it is something far stranger. Thoth wasn't worshipped the way Ra or Osiris was worshipped. He was consulted. There's a distinction there that matters enormously. Pharaohs didn't pray to Thoth for victory in battle or floods for their crops. They came to him when they needed to understand something the physical world couldn't explain. He was the deity of hidden knowledge, of the space between what's visible and what's real. Ancient Egyptian priests called him the twice great, then the thrice great, Hermes Trismegistus in the later Greek tradition. And that title wasn't honorary, it was a description. It meant he had mastered 3 planes of existence: the physical, the astral, and the divine. Now here's where the sleep ritual enters. In the Hermetic cosmology that flows directly from Thoth's teachings, sleep is not rest. Sleep is a portal. Before we continue, I want to show you something that could completely change how you see reality. Most people spend years collecting fragments of knowledge without ever finding the complete picture. That's exactly why we built the Reality Codex. It brings together the core principles behind manifestation, Hermetic philosophy, consciousness, and reality creation into one practical system. If you've enjoyed the teachings we've explored on this channel, you're going to love what's inside. You can find it through the link in the description below or by scanning the QR code on your screen. I'll give you a second to do that. Every single night, the ancient Egyptians believed the soul, what they called the Ba, naturally detaches from the body. It wanders, it receives. And in most people, it does this completely unconsciously, which is why most people wake up with nothing but scattered dream fragments. The teachings of Thoth were specifically designed to interrupt that unconscious drift and replace it with deliberate, directed soul travel. The texts that contain this framework are fragmentary and deliberately coded. The Emerald Tablet, the Corpus Hermeticum, the Kabbalion, and deeper still, the so-called Books of Thoth, a collection that most Egyptologists believe was real, referenced in ancient papyri as a library of 42 sacred volumes kept in the inner sanctum of Hermopolis, Thoth's city. Only initiates of the highest order were permitted to read them. Some scholars believe the rituals inside those books formed the actual technical curriculum of the Egyptian mystery schools. So when I say sleep ritual, I don't mean something someone invented on a wellness blog. I mean a practice with a 3,000-year documented lineage, possibly much older, that was deliberately kept out of reach of ordinary people because those who practiced it reported experiences that didn't fit inside the boundaries of normal human life. The specific protocol I've followed is reconstructed from 3 primary sources: fragments of Hermetic initiation texts, scholarly analysis of dream incubation practices in ancient Egypt, particularly the ritual use of temples like the Serapeum, and the geometric and vibrational principles laid out in what serious Hermeticists call the 7 Hermetic Laws. What those laws say about consciousness during sleep is radical. They say your awareness is not contained by your body. It never was. Sleep is simply the nightly proof of that, and the ritual is how you stop sleepwalking through the proof. I'm Daniel, and this is Hermetic Talk. And I want to be precise here, because the internet is full of vague gestures at ancient practices that strip out everything that made them functional. What I'm describing has specific components. They matter. The ritual, as reconstructed from Hermetic sources, has 4 distinct phases. The Egyptians didn't call them phases. They used symbolic language about the sun's journey through the duat, the underworld, from sunset to sunrise. But the underlying structure is clear once you know what you're reading. Phase 1 is purification. This is the part most people skip, and I think it's why most people fail to get results. In the ancient practice, this meant a period of fasting, usually from sunset, combined with ritual bathing and the burning of specific resins. Kaifi was the incense used most frequently in temple contexts, a compound mixture that ancient sources describe as having psychoactive properties when inhaled in an enclosed space over several hours. Modern reconstructions of Kaifi typically include honey, wine, raisins, and resins including frankincense, myrrh, and calamus. I used a close approximation. The intent isn't sedation, it's sensory reorientation, signaling to the nervous system that what's coming is different from ordinary sleep. Phase 2 is the geometric anchoring. This is distinctly Hermetic. Before lying down, the practitioner was instructed to visualize, with precision and held attention, a specific geometric form. In the texts I worked from, this was the Merkaba, the counter-rotating light body that appears in both Egyptian sacred geometry and later Kabbalistic tradition. The instruction isn't to picture it casually. You hold it in your mind's eye, rotating, luminous, locked around your physical body until the image becomes stable. This can take anywhere from 10 minutes to 45. Before we continue, some of what I've learned simply never makes it onto YouTube. That's why we have Insights Academy, a free newsletter where I go deeper into hidden knowledge, ancient wisdom, metaphysics, and the nature of consciousness, the knowledge we don't share in these videos. And when you sign up, you'll receive the Kabbalion as a welcome gift. You'll find it through the link in the description below or by scanning the QR code on your screen. I'll give you a moment to do that. The first night, it took me close to an hour. My mind kept fracturing the image. The practice itself told me something. I had very little control over my own sustained attention. Phase 3 is the vibrational activation. This is where it gets difficult to describe without sounding like I've lost the plot entirely, but I'll try. The Hermetic texts describe the soul as possessing a resonant frequency. When the body enters sleep, that frequency either disperses randomly, or, if the practitioner is trained, it intensifies. The technique for intensifying it involves breath control, a specific sequence that lengthens the exhale dramatically, combined with what the texts call the silent name, an internal vibrational tone, not spoken aloud, held in the chest and skull simultaneously. Different traditions associate this with different syllabic sounds. In the Egyptian context, the tones associated with Thoth himself were specific vowel sequences. Scholars of ancient Egyptian ritual like John Anthony West and Jeremy Nadler have both written about the use of vowel toning in temple practice. The sound wasn't musical, it was architectural. It was meant to build something. Phase 4 is the threshold crossing. You do not try to fall asleep. That distinction is everything. You hold awareness, deliberately, without forcing, at the precise edge of sleep. Hypnagogia, the modern term for that liminal state between waking and sleeping, is where the portal is. The ancient Egyptians knew this. Their word for it roughly translates to the horizon, the same word they used for the point where the sun meets the earth. Not above it, not below it. The exact line. I personally think this is the most underrated aspect of the entire practice, that the ancient Egyptians had a technical vocabulary for states of consciousness that modern neuroscience only began mapping in the last 50 years. They weren't being poetic, they were being precise. The first 2 nights I ran this protocol, the results were vivid but inconclusive. Lucid dream fragments, geometric imagery, a persistent sensation of weight leaving my limbs. I documented everything in a notebook I kept beside the bed. But the 3rd night was different. The 3rd night, something actually happened. I want to be careful about how I describe this because I'm not trying to perform mysticism for your entertainment. I've spent several years deep in this material. I did a full deep dive on the Emerald Tablet in a previous video that a lot of you have seen. And I think the worst thing I could do to this subject is dramatize it beyond what actually occurred. On the 3rd night, I completed all 4 phases. The Kefi had been burning for 90 minutes. The Merkaba visualization locked faster, maybe 20 minutes. The breath sequence felt different from the first 2 nights, less effortful. And then I hit the threshold and something I can only describe as a lateral shift happened. Not falling, not darkness, a sideways exit. What I perceived, and I'm choosing that word deliberately, was a space that I can only describe as structured. Not random dream imagery, not symbolic narrative, structure. Geometric, vast, and lit from no visible source. And there was information in it, not language, not images exactly, something closer to direct comprehension, the sense of suddenly knowing something without having processed it through normal thought. What I knew in that moment was this. The body I'd left behind was not the primary thing. This is not a comforting realization when you're inside it. There's a reason the ancients described the duat as terrifying even to the gods. It's not terror in the human sense, fear of pain or loss. It's the terror of scale, of recognizing that your normal waking identity is approximately the size of a grain of sand relative to what's actually there. I came back, and I do mean came back. There was a distinct return, with a physical jolt. Classic hypnagogic jerk, neurologically speaking. But this was not the scattered half-memory of a normal dream. I sat up and wrote for 45 minutes without stopping. I still have those notes. Now, what does this mean? I want to anchor this in the actual framework because the experience without the framework is just a weird anecdote. Thoth's cosmology, as transmitted through the Hermetic tradition, teaches that consciousness is not produced by the brain. The brain is a receiver, a tuning mechanism. What it tunes to is a field of awareness that exists independently, what the Hermeticists called the all, what the Egyptians encoded in the concept of noon, the primordial waters that existed before creation. Sleep in this model is not unconsciousness, it's detuning. The receiver loosens its grip on the physical signal, and for a moment, the underlying field bleeds through. The ritual doesn't create that experience, it just makes you conscious for it. I actually went back through 2 months of sleep notes I'd been keeping since I started studying this material more seriously. I started doing that after going down a research rabbit hole that lasted the better part of 3 days, and what I found was striking. On nights where I'd done even partial versions of the preparatory phases, my recall of non-ordinary states was dramatically higher. Not manufactured, recalled. The experiences were always there. I just wasn't awake enough to catch them. This is what the ancient Egyptian initiates understood. The Serapeum at Saqqara, where priests and high initiates practiced ritual sleep, what scholars call dream incubation, wasn't a place you went to have interesting dreams. It was a training facility. You went there to develop the skill of staying conscious across the threshold, night after night, year after year, until the geometry of what exists beyond ordinary waking life became as familiar to you as the walls of your own home. Thoth designed that curriculum, or transmitted it, depending on how literally you take the ancient sources, and I've gone back and forth on that for years. Either a very advanced human mind encoded this system, or something that wasn't human at all handed it to us and watched to see what we'd do with it. What I can tell you is this: the night I crossed that threshold, I didn't come back the same. Not in a dramatic, life-altered sense, in a quieter, more permanent way. The way you change when something you theoretically believed becomes something you've actually touched. Thoth's ritual isn't asking you to believe anything. It's asking you to look, to hold consciousness steady at the edge of the one experience every human being has every single night, and to finally, for once, keep your eyes open while it happens. The door has always been there. Most of us just keep sleeping through it.